Hey there, everybody, and I'm so glad to have you here with us today. I'm Diane Gilson with InfoPlus Accounting, but actually, we've just changed our name to InfoPlus Consulting. So it's going to take us a little while to get all that rebranded, but we are now InfoPlus Consulting. And today we have another Better Numbers, Better Business webinar. And tis the season for cybersecurity. You guys can read that on the screen. And I would like to welcome our presenters today, Ryan Kane and Nick Costa of Soaring Towers. And oh gosh, I love the name of your company.
Thank you for having
Glad to
us.
hear it, Diane. We've heard that before, so we're happy to hear you enjoy it.
Okay, great. And so I'm going to move on to our next screen here. And why we're teaming up today, I like to say, why would I invite these guys to come talk to us and share their knowledge? You know what? We have conversations internally on a regular basis that the software and all sorts of things are moving underneath us on a day to day basis. And so it just shows up in bits and pieces as we work in our company. So maybe it's time for a new computer for somebody, or Windows wants to update, but I don't have the time to let it go through that whole process. So maybe I'm just going to defer it or say, oh, don't bother. We'll just do it later. Or I get an email notifying me that a deposited check bounced and I should click here to see the amount and get the customer who had the bounced check. Now, I had that happen to me once. I was on vacation and it threw me into a panic. And I had actually deposited something for the amount they were telling me about just before I left for vacation. And so that email looked really legitimate, but I went, yeah, I think I better check. And so I did some background checking, and no, it was a spam email, and I did not click on it. So that was like a coincidence with the amount, I'm pretty sure. And gosh, I could have gotten myself in deep trouble. And if you're on vacation, particularly once you're outside of your normal environment, you can get disconcerted and maybe do things you wouldn't do otherwise. Or maybe we've got something like I found this nifty new software when I was out cruising the internet, and the first 6 months are free. Let's give it a shot, try it, see what happens. The company that creates my software says I should pay for another year's version. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Or why update? Of course, we've seen that happen with a lot of people in the Intuit environment. They're in the desktop version. And I just talked to somebody the other day that was back in, gosh, I think it was 2020. So back about 4 years. And once we talked to them, they were willing to go ahead and update. But lots of times people just don't understand why it's really important to get updated. And of course, from a financial perspective, what's the cost of a hacked system? I should have made $5 signs there, but it can be really, really time consuming, stressful, costly. You may have to pay somebody to get your data back, much less to help your IT company help you get all your data back and fixed and so on. It is really a problem. Okay. And I've had clients that called me, maybe I haven't worked with them for some time, and then they call me and say, oh, yeah, we got hacked. They got our data. And it took us 4 days to get back up and running again. We did have enough backup and support that we could get our data back. But even then, having your operations shut down on the financial side for several days, even that's a hassle. So these are just things why I wanted Ryan and Nick to come in and talk to us about some of these aspects. Ryan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go to Nick.
All right, sounds good. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Kane. I'm the CEO of Soaring Towers. As you can see, Nick and I a little different in age. I'm the one with the long-term experience. I've got a couple decades in IT management. Been in IT consulting for about a decade and a half. I pride myself on connecting people who speak tech with people who don't speak tech and bridging that gap between those two. So I can talk to people who are very technical, have those technical conversations, and then speak to people who are not very technical and find a way to have a meeting of the minds and make technical things work for people who aren't very technical. I have a lot of experience in finance, banking, accounting, those sort of industries, and then a lot of experience in the construction vertical, everything all the way from when a building gets built all the way down to leasing, financing, everything involved in getting a tenant in there. But widespread experience in a lot of industries as well, all the way from restaurant IT to RC car tracks. You name it, I've probably worked in it because let's face it, people use technology everywhere. Little fun facts about me you can see on the screen there. People wouldn't believe that a guy working in IT used to be a rock band drummer, but you would have laughed. You would have seen me sitting behind the drums behind a rock band in the 90s there. I have 3 kids, which I pride myself on. I'm a shuttle driver, so I basically drive a taxi. That's most of my time at this point, and I'm a big Lakers fan.
Cool. What I really liked, one of the things you talked about was being able to speak to ordinary people and explain some of the computeries in down to earth terms. And we just passed our 30th anniversary. We've worked with several, not too many, but several different companies. And when it did come time to switch, we'd talk to some of the computer companies, and occasionally somebody'd come in and they'd just start dropping all of their computerese lingo on us to really impress us with how smart they were. And in fact, I went, no, this isn't going to work for us. I need you to explain things in everyday terms that I can understand. I need you to be able to draw a picture and say the data goes from here over to here, things like that, because I'm not a techie. And I think so many of our clients are not they wouldn't hire an IT firm if they were techies, right? They'd do it themselves. But if they want another company to help them out, they want somebody they can have a down to earth conversation with and understand what's going on. So that is so, so important.
Absolutely. I think it's important for people to understand what people are doing for them. And I never want to be the person who is sitting in front of someone doing something and having the person behind me wonder, what on earth is this guy doing? What am I paying him for? And have that mystery where I just hand someone an invoice and they have no idea what kind of work was done. I always want people to understand everything that they're paying for, everything that's being done. And if they don't understand it, I didn't do a good job.
Great. Yeah, we have that same philosophy. We usually give people some very good documentation on the work that we are doing for them as we do it, as well as the notes after the fact. Same philosophy. So great. So Nick, let's hear from you. Could you talk about your background and what kind of work you do?
Definitely, yeah, and you guys have been hitting on the head. That's why Ryan and I work so well together in Soaring Towers. Is Ryan can be that bridge. As you may hear even from today's conversation, I do tend to get a little bit too technical, and Ryan is always there to pull me out, and break down those things, so everyone in the call is able to really understand what's happening. As you can see from my experience, I have a lot of IT certifications, a lot of different knowledge, specifically in the AI, in the enterprise IT space. So really focusing on helping businesses build that infrastructure and architecting so they're able to get some revenue from their technology. And as Ryan mentions, why we started Soaring Towers and are working together is a lot of knowledge in the construction and the accounting industries is my background, less of the banking, but a lot of that. So Ryan and I just meld really well together. Some fun facts. Ryan, which he didn't actually put on there, he's actually a runner and has inspired me to be more consistent on my running. And so I'm actually going to be running a marathon next year. That'll be my culmination. Hopefully get a good time, but we'll see about that. And then a big fan of ocean preservation and wildlife in general. We actually donate a proceed of Soaring Towers profits to charities every year because it's really big for me. And then also go McLaren, big fan of F1, and hopefully my team wins this year. So we'll see. But back.
Oh yeah, having that interpreter too can be very helpful. Sometimes I heard that described in a book as the curse of knowledge. So sometimes when you've been really deep inside a particular topic, it becomes then sometimes very difficult to turn around and explain that in a simpler way. So having that interpreter in place is great, but having the knowledge also is really great. The combination of the two sounds wonderful. Hopefully, a lot of the people on the call know a lot about me. Consultant, trainer, speaker, as I just mentioned, 30 years in business. I spent 16 years in public accounting, 13 years in banking, and we started InfoPlus Accounting in 1994. I have spent those 30 years working with business owners and accounting staff to help them put their job cost and management accounting systems in place so that they can look and see exactly what's going on in their company in a way that is useful and understandable to them. I've picked up a lot of certifications along the way. Probably the thing that's most recent and was very exciting for me was to be named the U.S. Pro Advisor of the Year. And now that makes me emeritus lifetime. I had been in the top 10 for actually, I believe it was the ninth or 10th year that I was in the top 10. And I'd picked up a couple of other little awards along the way. But now that I'm a U.S. Pro Advisor of the Year, it gets to be emeritus, and I don't have to apply every year. So that makes life a little easier. But yeah, I love to learn and add new things and do our best to stay current. But like I said, of course, everything's changing minute by minute. But that's a challenge, I believe, for all of us. So. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to give Soaring Towers a chance to walk through the topic that we have out here for us today. So give me one moment and I'm going to give Ryan the screen. So just a second. You are the presenter and I'll say yes. And you know what? I'm going to turn off my camera while we're going through this information, and I'll let you guys decide if you want to keep your camera on or not.
All right, thank you very much. So today's topic is cybersecurity, defending against ransomware, spoofing, and fraud. And Soaring Towers at its core is a managed services provider, MSP. Effectively, that means we are an outsourced IT company. So we'll do everything that you could require with technology, but at its core, we would be your help desk. And that means we do a lot related to cybersecurity regarding training, handling email, helping people set up secure shares, helping people set up their software, that sort of thing. And so today we're going to tell some stories, true stories that we've come across that have happened in our careers, some in my personal career, some in our careers that we've worked together. And they're a little scary. These are true things that have happened that we've actually been involved in. Now, there's a URL on the screen at the bottom, soaringtowersmsp.com/scary. And that is an interesting URL to use at this time of year because we are recording this in the holiday season. And the reason for that URL is because we were originally scheduling this webinar to be at Halloween time. And so this was going to be a Halloween themed webinar. And we decided that we could probably update it, but we decided to, just leave it. And it'll be a nice callback to the original scheduled date of this webinar. So we left it as soaringtowersmsp.com/scary. You could find more information about our company and an offer that we're giving that we'll talk about a little later related to these stories and everything on that. I'll move on to some general statistics and things that are going on in the industry right now. Some scary stuff happening right now. As you can see, I'm not going to read all of this for you, but last year, obviously we don't have this year's statistics yet, but last year, thousands and thousands of cyber attacks with millions of victims, and financial motivation is the number one key. Nick, I'm going to have you chime in here because this is a big motivator, and something actually happened very recently since we created these slides that lends a little more credence to this. Nick.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy. I was just catching up on the news this morning, and just this morning, the UK uncovered some cryptocurrency networks that are being used by the Irish mob as well as cyber criminals. And what they're doing is they're using these cryptocurrencies to have these hackers who have a lot of these cryptocurrencies to go to now organized crime and turn that cryptocurrency into hard cash that they have from doing all their illegal activities. So this is even incentivizing more hacking because now they know that cryptocurrency, which can't really go to your local Target and buy something, they're able to convert that into hard cash. So it's really incentivizing more hacking and more ransomware attacks. So there's already been some new predictions that we're going to see a big rise in 2025 of these attacks due to now these connections between these online criminals to now hardened criminals that have been doing bad things for many years. So it's pretty scary stuff. And that literally came out today, which I only expect these numbers to how many cyber attacks to just go up quite a bit, which is very unfortunate.
Speaking of recent news, there were a couple articles that came out across a lot of major news sources in the last couple of days that said don't send text messages. And they're encouraging people to send encrypted messages. And this was a topic we were actually going to talk about anyway, but this new warning that came out in the last few days, and this is all over major news sources, Forbes covered it, a lot of major news sources. And again, look over the past 24, 48 hours. There's a phrase that's salt typhoon. And we were planning on talking about this anyway, but Nick, can you give us the technical details behind why there's news out there that says don't send text messages?
Definitely. And as I mentioned before, I'll try not to get too technical, just keep it a little technical for everyone. But what Salt Typhoon was is in your home, you have this thing called a modem and a router. You may have heard of modem or router, you may have heard those terms before. What that does is it pretty much gives your whole house internet. You're able to go on your Wi-Fi, stream Netflix, whatever that may be. Same for your home, same for your business, just do different things. These Chinese hackers were actually able to hack the internet providers that provide you internet for your house, for your business. You may have heard of Spectrum, Xfinity, all these companies, and they're able to siphon off and look at all your data, where you're going, what you're doing, and pretty much get access to millions, hundreds of thousands of devices because they're able to hack these big providers of internet. And the NPD breach was the Salt Typhoon breach. They did find out that this was happening, but, which is what Ryan was saying, which that was actually an alert from the FBI, is that we think we got them, but we don't really know, and we think that they're still in there. So this was a warning from the FBI of, hey, send encrypted messages, and this can be through, if you have two iPhones, via iMessage, so those blue bubbles, that's encrypted. And if you're sending from Androids, some of them have this thing called RCS, and that'll encrypt it. There's also third-party apps like WhatsApp that'll also do that same thing. But the reason why they're recommending this is because so many of the internet providers are compromised themselves. So if you start sending a text message, that's like you're sending someone a postcard. If they look at the back of your postcard, they can see everything you wrote to that person. It's the same thing with the text message that's not encrypted. So these are some big things that are coming out. And again, with organized crime now having direct connection to these organized online criminals and these breaches, it's just becoming a very interesting time for the future where you really have to care about your data and make sure you're doing everything you can to protect yourself. Because like even the FBI said, we don't know who's out there or what access they do have.
All right, I'll tie a little bow on that. Nick mentioned the phrase RCS. For those of you with iPhones, in the box where you type a text message, it will say text and the three letters RCS if you're sending an encrypted message to an Android user. If you're talking to an iPhone user from iPhone to iPhone, it will just be blue. Android to Android, that's where it gets a little dicey. And that's why we always talk about having updated phones and updated software. That's how you can make sure your messages are encrypted. Or you can always just get an external third-party app like WhatsApp, Telegram. There's a ton of them, but sending regular unencrypted old school text messages, there's a non-zero chance that it could be read by a Chinese hacker, and we know that has been read. Now, Nick, you did drop a name accidentally. I think you got to a second
Yes.
topic there. You said NPD breach. That's something else we wanted to talk about. Have people's social security numbers been stolen?
Yes, that is what the NPD breach is. It was the largest Social Security breach in history. And 2024 is a year of breaches, it seems like, and hackers, because that again happened this year. It was found out that there was over 3.5 million Social Security numbers, but that's how many were in a leaked database that was sent on the dark web, which pretty much has all of your employment verification. That's what this data breach was. As everyone may know, when you apply for a job, you do first name, last name, address, Social Security, all that information. One of those major databases from one of the biggest employment verification providers was compromised. So all the data that you would put on a job application is now public data. So we're seeing a lot of, especially with the rise of AI, impersonations that are trying to take place, where people are acting as other people. They can have your full name, your social, everything like that. And so again, federal government is recommending you freeze your credit if you are in these data breaches. And Ryan, if you want to just jump back one slide, if you go to soaringtowers.com, soaringtowersmsp.com/scary, we do actually give you a link to a federal resource just to check to see if your data is on there, just to make sure how to react with that. Because unfortunately, it's now not of how can we prevent this, it's what can we do to make sure that we mitigate and make sure there's not more damage in the future.
All right. Thank you very much for that. We said we were going to tell some stories. Let's jump into some stories at this point. We've talked enough about how scary the current climate is. Let's talk about some stuff that happened in the past. Our first story takes place in 2012. So this is over 10 years ago. And this is a story that I came across. This was a construction developer, property management company, and a secretarial employee, administrative assistant opened an email, just like everyone does. And it was so long ago, I couldn't tell you the exact contents of the email, but it was one of those emails like we all get, something like, your FedEx package has been delayed, click here to check the status, or one of those type of things that we've all seen. We all know a lot of more red flags now than we knew 10 years ago, but we know there's lots of tricks to get us to click on things. The employee clicked on the email link, and at that time, it instantly started infecting the computer with what was called a CryptoLocker virus. Now, the CryptoLocker virus back in 2012 was a particularly devastating virus. It began encrypting all of the files on the computer. And by encrypting, I mean encapsulating the file in an encrypted format so it could no longer be opened. But it didn't stop there. The computer had mapped drives. Now, by a mapped drive, if you've ever used a PC, you may recognize that there's a My Computer or This Computer, and inside of that, there's a C drive. Well, some people might have more than a C drive. They might have a D drive or an N drive or an M or a Z or some other drive letters. Well, this got into that and got into the shared drives that all of the employees had access to. And this virus started encrypting all of the files on all those other drives. The employee that clicked on this email was embarrassed and did not realize that this was happening. And she walked away from her computer. The encryption did not happen in a flash. It actually took place over a couple of hours. She went home. The next morning, when everyone came in, all of the files across the entire organization had been encrypted and no one could do anything. This was in the days of on-premises email, and the entire email server had been encrypted. Nothing worked. The virus itself had left a message on the desktop with ransom instructions saying, hey, we've encrypted your files. Here is an email address to communicate with us, and we would like a ransom payment in Bitcoin. Here's how to pay us the ransom, and we will unencrypt your files. So this was classic ransomware, which was fairly new at the time. Interesting side note to this, Bitcoin just hit $100,000 in value today. Bitcoin was not worth $100,000 in 2012. I don't know how much it was worth, but it was worth far, far less. And very few people were using Bitcoin. Discussion was had through the company that was infected, and there was really no way to get data back. And backups were not as sufficient as they are today, where they were done both on-site and off-site. So the ransomware actually got into the backup system and encrypted the backups as well, because it was attached USB drive that was actually infected. So there were no unencrypted backups. So the decision was made to pay the ransom, which at that time was roughly $700 in Bitcoin. In order to accomplish this, I was actually brought in and asked as a technical person to find a way to get Bitcoin for them. So that was my task on this project. I sourced some Bitcoin, which was not possible to get the exact amount. So I got a little more than we needed, paid the ransom for them, and In an interesting twist, the bad guys actually gave us the keys to unlock the files and we got everything back. The FBI doesn't actually encourage you to do that because they don't want to encourage the bad guys to get paid. But in this case, they did give us the keys and we were able to get the data back. Fun fact, because I didn't have the right amount of Bitcoin, I had a little extra. I set it off to the side in what's called a crypto wallet and forgot about it for about 8 years or so. 8 years later, Bitcoin increased in value a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean thousands of percent. So I wound up with many thousands of dollars in Bitcoin as a nice little tip for doing this favor for this company. But in the end, they did lose about a week of productivity because getting that crypto and figuring out the entire issue and unencrypting everything and then running scans to make sure that we had really gotten everything out of there did take a full week before we got the company back online. This never should have happened. The company should have been protected from the start. The employee never should have opened the email. Nick, from a security perspective, how could that have been prevented?
You touched on it with the staff clicking on a link accidentally and just leaving for the day, which that's a case of education. That issue, even if you didn't change any of the security that that business had, if you just educated the staff on, number one, how to spot some of these links, especially in the age of AI where they can personalize and hyper personalize these phishing emails towards individuals, if that staff was educated on how to spot a malicious email, how to spot a malicious website, and then how to respond when or if there is an issue, that would have gone a long way because you would have been able to take that computer off the network, which is the number one thing to do when there's a ransomware attack, is literally just grab that power cord and yank it out. If you would have done that, it would have greatly minimized the breach. And sure, there may have still been some data encrypted, but it could have been a lot less than the entire network and the entire business come to a grinding halt. Additionally, security that is tailored towards ransomware, those are called XDR solutions, which pretty much mean that they are purpose built for these next generation viruses. It would have solved this issue because it would have been able to detect that and go ahead and compress and lock down that computer and then also revert backwards. Additionally, backups, which again is a key thing from the FBI and from pretty much every cyber vendor will tell you, if you have good backups that you can restore back from, that can save you tens of thousands of dollars in ransom fees, as well as just get you back up and running where you don't have to hope and pray that this hacking group will give you your stuff back.
I'd
Go ahead,
like to
Diane.
jump in and ask a question
Yeah.
because Ryan, you said they charged $700?
Yeah, $700 at that time, which you don't want to know how much money that would be worth today.
I was going to say the stories that I've heard recently, the ransomware amounts are way higher than that. I
Yeah,
mean,
this
enough to take a
early.
company under in many
Oh yeah,
cases.
this was early ransomware. This was one of the first ransomwares that was coming out. This was very early, 2012.
Sorry for
Yeah, the
interrupting, but
estimated cost of,
I've
you're right,
seen some of
Diane,
those
is
numbers. Yeah.
it's in the five figures for businesses that make around $1 million. It's in five figures. That scales about 10x by your revenue. And again, most of these things are public. There's Zoom Info, there's all these places where these hackers can find out how much money you make and go, okay, if your business makes $10 million, we'll take 10% of that. It's either your business goes under and you lose that, or you are going to pay us 10%. And that 10%, maybe you only have to, let's say they're a cheaper hacking group, they'll only charge you $30,000 to $50,000. There's still the long-term effects of that. We see a lot of brand reputation issues. We've actually come in months after an attack happens and everything goes up. Insurance premiums go up. We had clients that they were struggling to acquire new clients because they were so wary of this issue because they were a name in the industry. And unfortunately, people found out. And so people actually pretty sheepish of working with them because they didn't want them to get affected as well.
To speak to the complexity of how this has evolved over time. In 20, the $700 was not a lot of money. And I don't think that they had really evolved this process much. These days, the hacking groups are asking for amounts that show that they know how much an insurance amount would be. So they know how much a company is going to be able to pay before they're going to have to go to their insurance company. And that's how much they're asking in a lot of cases. So it's interesting that they'll figure out in a certain industry, okay, in construction, their insurance policy is going to require them to pony up 20K before the insurance company will kick in. So they might ask for 15,000 from a construction company, and they'll look it up. They'll actually know about your company and have an idea of how much you would have to pay. So it's very complex these days compared to what it used to be. And like I said, this is a 12-year-old story. I'll move on just in the essence of time. Story number 2, and this is a far more recent story. This is now from about 5 or 6 years ago. 365 email compromise. So this is talking about Office 365 at the time. It's now called Microsoft 365. A business owner at the time decided against using multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication is where it texts you a code, that 6-digit code, or you have an app on your phone where you have to type in a code. Well, that's not very convenient for a lot of people, and that takes extra time. And back then, Microsoft wasn't requiring it. And so the business owner decided, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to just log in and make it super fast and super convenient for myself and my employees whenever we need to get to email on any device, just make it easy. And so that's how everything was set up, and it was working great until security became an issue. Now, of course, they got compromised because you can do what's called a brute force attack on that, or trick someone by sending a phishing email. But I want to talk about convenience for a second. And I talk about convenience on a spectrum. With security and convenience, just picture a line with security way over here on one side and convenience way over here on the other side. And it's fine to be anywhere on that spectrum. But you have to recognize that if you're way far on the convenience side, you're very far from the security side. And if you're very far on the security side, you're very far from the convenience side. And the way I describe this is you have a house. I'm sure all of us have a front door, and you have a deadbolt on it or a lock on it in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you have just one lock. Maybe you have a lock plus a deadbolt. Maybe you have a lock plus a deadbolt plus a chain. The more you have, the more slight inconvenience you have when you come home and you have to unlock things. If you have one lock, you just turn one key or press one thing and it opens. If you have two, it's two things to unlock and then it opens. If it's three, that's less convenient but more secure. I could put 40 deadbolts on a door and that's more secure, right? Because to pick 40 locks would take a bad guy or someone breaking in a much longer time to break in. But imagine coming home and having 40 different keys and turning 40 different deadbolts. Very inconvenient. And so you're moving from the convenience side all the way to the security side. But then imagine an old-timey Western saloon with no locks and no keys, where it's just one of those swinging doors where you just waltz in, and it's super convenient. You just walk up to your door and you're like, I'm home. The doors swing open. And that's going all the way from security back to convenience. You can pick wherever you want to be on the security and convenience spectrum. This business owner that we're talking about here decided against the security side and swung a little bit towards the convenience side. In this story, that business paid the price. The bookkeeper received a phishing email, and ultimately, long story short, it led to compromising that staff member's email. Now, an interesting component of this story is the email compromise was hidden for quite some time. The hacker that compromised the email did not change the password. What they did is they got into that user's email and added some things to the email system so that they could send and receive email undetected. They could send outbound email, and then they were erasing the emails from the sent folder. And then if they would send someone an email, they would create what's called a rule, so an automated action, for inbound email from certain email addresses that would route them to do something special so that the real person who used that email address wouldn't see them. And the reason why that was bad is because they were committing fraud. They were sending new payment details. This happened to be a construction company, and they were sending new payment details to other bookkeepers of some of their vendors and some of their customers saying, hey, if you owe us this money, we changed bank accounts. Here's the new bank account. Send your payment here instead. And then when the person replied and said, hey, that sounds weird, can you verify? The incoming email didn't actually go into the inbox. It went to this special inbox. And then the hacker would go to that special sub inbox that the real user didn't see. They would check it in the middle of the night and then schedule a sent item to go at a specific time that looked like it was during business hours, even though they sent it in the middle of the night. And then it would auto scrub that from the sent email box so that the real user never saw any of it. Ultimately, when money started getting lost, it was found, and we found the business email compromise. Unfortunately, business email compromise is a major way that businesses lose money. And this method of changing payment details is a common way of doing it. And although this story is 4 or 5 years old, it is still happening today, and it is prevalent in the construction industry. Nick, how could they have avoided this?
You touched on it at the start with MFA. MFA, it does make it a little bit, maybe add 1 or 2 deadbolts to get in, but it does make you way more secure. There are many different ways now to get in MFA, like you mentioned, with an app. Microsoft and a bunch of these providers are moving towards passwordless, where instead of even putting in a password, you just put in your email and it'll ding your cell phone and be like, hey, are you trying to sign in from this location? Go ahead and put in these numbers, or just press yes and you'll get right in, which does make it a lot easier. Additionally, there are some cutting edge systems that actually hook into 365 and do logging. These are called SIEMs, SIEMs, Security Information Event Monitors, which pretty much means that it can go ahead and connect into an email and be like, why is someone making a rule to move all mail from the inbox into this other place? It's a little suspicious. Maybe we flag that. And then your IT team can take a look at that, maybe reach out to you and be like, hey, you're scheduling emails at 1 in the morning to go out at 9 o'clock in the day. Are you a night owl, or is this something more malicious? And there's all these great tools that are there. But there's a lot of really easy things that you can do with just enabling MFA, doing a different password on your stuff, and using a password manager. We hear a lot of times being like, I don't want to create a different password for every website. I can't remember any of these things. I don't have a piece of paper, but my password sheet, it's out of space. And I go, that's why there's software for that. There's whole systems dedicated to being a password manager that manages all your passwords, so you can do really complex ones that are different for every single website so that you're secure. Let's say we talked about the NPD breach. Let's say there's another breach. It's not really if, it's when, unfortunately. But let's say there is another breach. If your password gets compromised, no worry. That was a random one you chose anyway for that website, so you know none of your other sites are going to get compromised too. So that's the big thing there. And what we hear from people is, what if my password manager gets breached? There's a lot of things you can do. What we do for our clients is we lock them down based on their geographic region. Now, one negative of that is you do have to call us if you're going to Tahiti and you're a US business, because that'll flag it. But we pretty much lock that down because a lot of the hackers are in other countries and they'll use a VPN to get in, which pretty much makes it look like they're from the US digitally. We block those things and notify our team when that happens so that we can reach out to that individual and say, hey, we need to change your master password, or we need to figure out what's happening here and get to the bottom of it. But again, we use MFA. That is a standard. Ryan mentioned it. He said Microsoft didn't allow it. All the providers, if you create new accounts in Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, any of these systems, they will require multi-factor authentication, because it truly is the standard in order to be safe nowadays. It's sad to say, but with AI getting so good at guessing passwords and impersonating people, really the only way to be protected is to have a second form where you know that, hey, I'm logging into my email, I have my phone, so I know it's me. It's unfortunate, but truly that is the only way to stay protected. Ryan, you're muted. The
Thank you
infamous.
for that. I take a tissue out for 1 second and I want to make sure nobody hears that and then I forget about it. All right, thanks. We got one more story to go through now. All right, our last story. And I want to go over this one. Even though it has some similarities, it's got a twist to it that I want to make sure we cover here. And this one is domain impersonation. And this is a dirty trick. I don't like this one. I find this one to be not just illegal, but unethical, immoral. It's just downright mean. It's just mean and nasty. So this was less than a year ago. Soaring Towers actually was brought in to a new client to work on a compromise situation. And fraud was committed and a domain impersonation was put in place. And what actually happened was a company with some L's and I's in the name had a bad actor register a domain name with a very similar domain, but instead of lowercase, they used, I'm sorry, I want to get this right, capital I instead of lowercase l. And those look really similar. And if you send someone an email and use the capital I instead of a lowercase l, you can pass it off as being the same email. Just think of the word like fall, but FA capital I, and they can pass off as looking as basically the same word, for example.
And additionally,
And
just to piggyback off that, they even recreated the website. So if you go there, you're like, that seems a little interesting. Let me go to the website. They copied the entire website. So you'd be like, oh, it looks the same email, like Ryan said, and the website's the same. Oh, must be a good person email. But in this case, it definitely wasn't.
yeah, once they did that, they had a roped in version of everything where they had set up an entire facade to trick both parties in a transaction, the business and a customer. And in this case, it was a home builder. And home builders deal in multi hundreds of thousands of dollars transactions because they're selling homes. And as we all know, anyone who's bought a home knows down payments on homes and wire transactions on homes are significant amounts of money. And this is what the hackers were after. And this is what the hackers successfully were able to change the direction of the payment. I won't go and spend a lot of time on the details of this because the way they actually went about it was very similar to the last story in terms of changing the Outlook settings and that sort of thing once they wound up compromising the email address after tricking everyone. But Nick, let's talk about how that could have been prevented because domain impersonation and the way they got in is different than just straight up phishing. It's a different vector of entering into the system.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is technical. So I'll try to keep it not too technical, but there are now systems, thankfully, with AI that we're seeing that can actually do impersonation checking. So you can actually put your business domain in there and it can pretty much scour the internet and find all the lookalike domains. That's one of the ways. But additionally, there's settings in most major email systems like Google as well as Microsoft that has detections that will notify users and say, hey, we noticed that this is capital L's and you guys are capital I's, and you'll get notified with that. So it does help you from being protected. It doesn't help your clients besides sending requests to the FBI using some of these algorithmic systems that can scan the internet and find that stuff. But that's pretty much the only way besides, again, making sure that your staff is protected from incoming emails going from there.
Now, protecting your own staff, though, is a major factor here because in this story, the staff member was duped and ultimately was compromised and led to this compromise that went deeper and deeper. So, although we can't necessarily protect all customers from being duped, if we can protect your staff member from being duped, in this case, both sides were duped into being fraudulently tricked into being party to this. So if we can protect one side, that should be enough to prevent both parties from being tricked into performing a fraudulent transaction together. But that's how that happened. But that wraps up our stories, and I think it's time for us to send it back to Diane.
Okay, thank you. Gosh, so interesting. So many different angles and ways that we can be compromised. These are all scary stories. And we are very cognizant of security here. And yet I heard a couple of things that we're probably going to follow up on our side. Yeah, you wouldn't believe how much time we spend on security. But nevertheless, it's a constantly evolving landscape, I think. And yeah, okay. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for making us feel bad.
Well, we're hoping some of those tricks that we gave you guys of how to protect, I hope that some people will take that and at least reach out to your IT team, reach out to us. We're happy to help. But just go ahead and implement even some of these low-hanging fruit, because those do go a long way.
So I'm going to turn on my camera here for a little bit, just you guys get to see our friendly faces, all of us. So we're at the spot right now where we have some cool giveaways, and you guys tell me about what you're going to give away to one of our lucky participants.
We are going to give away a $50 Home Depot gift card today. Hopefully that makes someone's holiday a little brighter.
That is terrific. And I haven't looked to see participants today, but we had picked out one number ahead of time, and our COO is taking a look at which participant falls into the number we had selected ahead of time. And so this is Laura Bell, our COO. And Laura, who is our lucky winner of that Home Depot gift card?
That will be Rebecca DeWitt. And we'll reach out to you soon after our webinar today and get your details, Rebecca.
And we have a giveaway, and this is a home kit that has all sorts of neat little tools. It's one that I have here, and that's why I knew it was a neat prize, because it's all in a kit, and it has almost everything you'd need for any little things around the house. And I don't know how you guys work or your families work, but you know what? If you've got somebody else in the household and then you go, oh, I need the pliers, I need the needle nose pliers for something, and then you can't find them. And so the neat thing about this little toolkit is maybe if you win it, you can put your name on it and say, nobody else can use this other than me. Okay, put a label on it or something. So it's a nifty little toolkit. Laura, let's go look at participant number 4 for this one.
That will be Rick Reiner.
Okay, Rick, we will reach out and make sure that this gets sent to you directly, and then you can decide how to distribute it in your household. Who might get that? Terrific. All right, I had a couple questions out here just in case, and this would be rapid fire questions. The industries you guys have touched on, any industries that you wouldn't work with?
I'm not sure there's any industries that we're going to turn away, but our ideal industries are probably construction and the entire construction vertical I mentioned earlier, all the way from the main construction companies, home builders, but then also the entire vertical, the subs. We have HVAC companies, we have tile distributors, we have real estate agents, we have everything from top to bottom in the entire vertical. We also specialize in the accounting hub. So wealth management, accounting, that sort of thing. But again, we've done kind of everything. Like I said, the hospitality industry, we're working on a batting cage right now. You name it, everyone uses computers. Although we do have our ideal core industries, we'll help whoever needs help.
Okay, Nick, I'm going to let you pick. I'm going to have you guys pick out a couple more because I do want to leave a couple minutes at the end for us to run through some of the special offers for people. Let's pick out 2 more. Nick, you pick out one, and Ryan, you pick out another one.
Definitely, yeah. The thing is, the most frequent problems, what we see is obviously cybersecurity and stuff like that. There's a lot of those problems that we see, and those are tech problems. But the biggest problem that I see that is more of a business problem, which is something that we really help with and we focus on, is businesses not using the right technology. Diane, you mentioned about using out-of-date QuickBooks and stuff like that. We almost look at a holistic solution of what accounting software you're using, why you're using it, and how it integrates into your workflows. Because too often we see businesses are trying to build their business around a piece of software, or they're trying to pigeonhole a software into a process that it really won't work for. So we take a look at that and provide some of that consulting of really what the right software is to implement and how you can have technology and your business work with each other so you can have your business explode with that.
Okay. And Ryan, one more question here, and then we're going to make sure that we can let people leave at the top of the hour, but I've got a few more things to cover, so talk fast.
No problem. All right, I'll do do you offer different layers or versions of support? And the answer to that is an enthusiastic yes. We have different layers and versions. We have very basic all the way up to the tip top. We always start our clients on what's called the STEP program, Soaring Towers Efficiency Pathway. What that means in a very brief version is we go in, we figure out what you got, we figure out how we can make it more efficient. And then at the end of that, we figure out how to take you into the future. And by the future, I mean adding in automation, adding in AI, those sorts of things. So we'll do an assessment, we'll make it optimized for whatever you currently have, and then we'll take you into cutting edge things if that's fits your business model. Very happy to be providing those sorts of things for our clients.
Okay, great. And moving on, somehow we always run out of time. So much good information. So would you tell folks about your special offer, and then I'll tell them about some of the things that we do and something especially that's new and coming up.
Yeah, our special offer is, oh, Nick, go ahead. I think you want to say it.
Yeah, I was going to jump and say, yeah, because I've been talking a lot about training. A lot of people say, how do we get cybersecurity training? We offer a free month. Don't have to even talk to us. It's literally just going to be, you can sign up on our website. You'll get access to our training platform, provide all of our clients for 1 month. And then we also provide you a cybersecurity assessment if you want to meet with us and see what we can do to protect your business. And we'll give you a roadmap. You don't have to work with us, but at least you'll know what you need to do. Diane, back to you.
Great. Sounds
Can
like.
I add one thing? The reason why this is so important is, and I just want to get the statistic out there, you can reduce your chances of being breached by 70% just by training your staff. People think it's all about firewalls and adding software and all that stuff. Reduce it by 70% just by training the people. Training. All right. Sorry, I wanted to take that extra time. Diane, to you.
Okay, I am going to spend just a moment talking about our latest offering. I'm going to start doing free webinars on this mid-December, and we'll let you guys know about it. But our latest offering is, we're calling it AI at Work. And this is a program and a series of programs and training to help you utilize AI, basically ChatGPT or any one of the other AI programs, in so many different ways at a generic level for every role within every type of organization to help you become more effective, more efficient. There are many, many tools out there now that are utilizing AI. But this training is going to say, here's the generic AI, and now how do you use it to help make your day-to-day work better, faster, more effective, and help your company become more profitable. We're excited about this. We think we've got free offerings within this training, and there will also be some paid offerings. We just want to roll this out and let everybody know about it. We've been utilizing ChatGPT more extensively in our company. I've been using it about a year, and our other staff members have been using it. Our team has been using it now for about 6 months, and we're seeing just huge benefits. Yeah, you have to check it. You have to make sure us humans plus AI isn't going to come in and take over your company. You need to check it. And then, of course, we have our typical camp. We've had this out here for a long time. Our online training program, if you're in desktop, pre-built construction template, if you're in desktop, what do your employees really cost? Okay, that's a great separate little program. You can find out, are my employees really, yeah, I might be paying them $20 an hour, but they're really costing me X number of dollars when you take all the pieces and parts into place. We do have a month-end closing checklist, and actually we've turned this into a closing system that's very extensive. We have a free self-assessment, and you guys can get all of these slides and download them. These are all clickable links for both Soaring Towers and for us. And we can help you choose the best enterprise software that's out there. And there is a link in there, it ran over, but lots of links, and you can download it if you're live from here. We will also send out the recording and links to these handouts. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate the work you put into this and the great information that you shared. And many thanks. And again, you guys will be hearing from us. Anybody who signed up for this will be hearing from us again in the future about our upcoming webinars.
Thank you
Fantastic.
for
Thank you
having us.
so much, Diane.
Okay, terrific. So, in closing, I'd say have a fantastic day, a successful week, and a profitable year.
You too.
Have a good one, Diane. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
take care. Bye.